Oh, no. Is that one? Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Halochet. Ezo aboshes. What's boshes? I'll call it the amivayish from mizbayish. Now, this is a boshes when you embarrass somebody, right? Obviously, you embarrass the girl in this case. So everything is dependent on who, in general, not just over here, but anytime it's dependent on who's doing the embarrassing and who's being embarrassed. Okay? And that's how we assess the payment of boshes. And I'm going to expand on that a little bit. Pagam, in terms of pagam, which is not to say there's nezek. Nezek is the damage, right? Pagam is devaluation. Roin also ki'ilu shivcha nikeres b'shuk. We look at this girl. How should we sold as a slave in the marketplace? Kama yafa, how much she would have been worth the selling before, but kama yafa, and how much is worth to sell now. Knas, however, is shavi b'chol adam. The gabosh become fluctuate. So does nezek when there's nezek, when you pay damages. However, knas is always equivalent. It's always the $50. And anything which is given to set some in the Torah itself, shav them is always equivalent, no matter who the individual is. Says the Gemara, lo dam emabayish es agodo, lemavayish es akoton. There's no comparison between somebody who embarrasses a great man and somebody who embarrasses a small man. In other words, a great man's embarrassment when he's embarrassed is far greater than a small person's embarrassment when he's embarrassed. When a small person, right? In other words, your stature contributes to the sense of embarrassment and degradation that you feel. Similarly, lo dama mizbayish min agol, there's no comparison between somebody who is embarrassed by a person who's greater, who's bayish min agol, than a person who's embarrassed by a person who's of lesser stature. Obviously, to be embarrassed, well, it's not obvious, but it seems that to be embarrassed by a person of greater stature is more of an indignity, right, than for to be embarrassed by a person of lesser stature. Albeit, however, that's not at all clear, because the Moshe Carbonator offer various different interpretations here. They say if a person, all right, name it. There's other possibilities, but that's the way it seems the most simple interpretation. V'nizko. Now, the word nezek here seems to be out of place because there is no nezek really here. So, the question is what nezek means. So, the Korban Eidah learns it's going on boshes, which is the type of conversation here, right? Embarrassment. Moshe learns it's going on pagam, on her lesser status when she's sold as a slave. The Ben Aryeh at the bottom says that it's going on nezek itself, and he's saying that there's such a concept even by this such concept nezek, which is relative. Normally we say nezek is what your arm is worth, but if let's say the guy takes off your arm, but obviously there are various different works for an arm. A person's a concert pianist, then nezek is greater than if a person is consultant, right? So then he doesn't have to do that much with his arm. So everything is relative to what you do. So therefore you have a concept of boshes hagodol merubeh. The embarrassment which a great person suffers is great. However, his nizko, his damage is muat, is less. In other words, he's really not worth that much. His arm isn't worth that much. Whatever it is, not worth that much. So therefore, that's not the payment of nezek is not comparable to payment of boshes, right? On the other hand, boshes hakoton memuat, the boshes of the koton of a small person is relatively small. How much can be embarrassed? He has not that much stature to begin with. Nevertheless, nizko merubeh, if he's damaged, let's say you cut off his arm and his trade was as a porter, right? Which would be generally a poor person's type of trade, menial labor. So then, of course, the nezek is very great because the damage to him is far greater as a result of whatever wound he suffered. Okay, halachates.
The third thing is boshes.
There's actually 5 things: nezek, which is the damage. Tsar, the pain which you suffer. We had that in the previous case. Boshes, embarrassment. Pgam, which is your lesser value. And then there's also ripui, the cost it takes to heal you. Yeah, which of course is not relevant here in this case. Okay? Anytime you can sell a girl, you don't get a fine if she's raped or seduced. Any place where there is a knas, where you would get a fine, you can't sell the girl into slavery. Meaning, Kitana yesh la mecher, a girl who's under 12, she can be sold, vein la knas. But if she undergoes a rape or seduction, there is no knas. There's no fines. Nara yesh la knas, a nara, a girl between 12 and 12 and a half, has a knas. There is a fine if she's raped or seduced. Vein la mecher, she can't be sold. Habogeres, when she's over 12 and a half, lo knas, lo mecher, there's no fine in case of rape or seduction, nor can she be sold. Now there are a lot of typos in the Gemara here, so just tag along. Rabbi Chia b'Shem Yochanan said, "Rabbi Meir." This is going like Rabbi Meir, our Mishnah. But on Kabbanan, however, like Rabbanan, there's a case in her history when yesh mecher v'knas kacha, she can't be sold, and if she's raped or seduced, her father does receive a knas. How so? Now let's expand on that. Rabbi Meir, according to Meir, Mibasi Omer, from the time she's 1 day old, Va'ad, until it should be, instead of Shol Yamecha, not until she's 3 years and 1 day, Ba'ad Shetavish Tei Sa'aros, but until she gets 2 hairs, which is a sign of adulthood. Yesh Lamecha, she can be sold. Ve'en la knas, she doesn't get knas, nor her husband, father does not get knas if she's undergoes ones or pitui, rape or seduction. And the next one also should be Mishivia Shtei Saros. Once she gets 2 hairs, and she's an adult, Achativka until she becomes 12 and a half, Yesh Lo Knas. So in that case, if somebody has relations with her, then there is a knas, there is a fine. Vein la mecher, she can't be sold, because above 12 she can't be sold. Bogeres, a girl who's above 12 and a half, lo mecher may not be sold by her father, velo knas, nor does she get a knas in a case of pitui or onus. Now that's like Remeir. However, Rabbanan, like the Rabbanan who are Remeir.
Does that mean lo mecher lo knas to the father or even to the woman?
Well, according to even to her, and this is going even to her. Knas is only for a nara, not to a bogeres. Even for her, no knas. Rabbanan argue, they hold me bas yoima from the time she's born, bad shol shayim v'mechon until she's 3 in a day. So then it should be yesh lo mecher ve'en lo knas, opposed to mecher knas ke'achas. Should be yesh lo mecher ve'en lo knas. She can be sold, but there's no knas in case of onus or pitui. Because they're pursuing come back, right? By the time she's 3 years and 1 day, until she has 2 hairs, it should be mecheru knas ke'echot, not yesh lo mecher ve'en lo knas. Rather, she can be both sold and she receives knas, even as a ketana. She receives a knas. Actually, the knas doesn't go to her. Of course, the knas goes to her father. Once she gets 2 hairs until she becomes 12 and a half, lo mecher, there's no sale, nor there's there any knas. Right? You're stuck. Says the Gemara, Tamatim learned over there, Habal Naram Ros, if somebody has relations with a girl who's betrothed, Eino Chayav, he's not liable, Ad she and Nara, unless she's a Nara, which means she's over 12 and below 12 and a half. Bisula, the first time around, Murasa, who's betrothed, Bevesabia, in her father's house. Ba'al and if 2 people have relations, as we learned last night, Harishon, the first guy still gets skila, but Hashem, the second guy already gets chenek, because by that time she's been downgraded to a Ba'ula, right? Even though it wasn't her own husband, but she's been downgraded, therefore the second guy only gets suffocated to death. Much more pleasant. Rabbi Yasser Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chia b'Shem Elazar said, the Rabbi Meir, this is going like Rabbi Meir. However, Baram Krabanan, but according to Rabbanan, she doesn't have to be a Nara. Afilu Ktana, even if she's a minor, there's still people are put to death for having had relations with her. My time, what's the reason? Now here it says Rameh, but it should be the Rabbanan. All the Mepharshim change it. My time, the Rabbanan. What's the logic of Rabbanan? Who say that even when she is under 12 nevertheless, even though she's under 12, there's still the penalty of skila. The penalty is stoning, right? You don't have to be 12 and a half for the penalty. 12 for the penalty to be stoning. How do we know that? It says in the parsha, or wherever it mentions nara, it says a nara without a hay. Okay? So what if it says nara without a hay? That means even if she's I made a mistake. Sorry. Made a mistake. Let me go back 2 lines. Rabbi Yasser, Shem Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chia, B'Shem Lezer, Dry Mary. Let's go to Krabanan. V'ran Krabanan, Afilu Katana, even Katana has a knas. Right? Even if the Rameir's one that says the knas only goes to girls over 12, not stoning. The knas only goes to girls over 12. Rabbanan, the knas even goes to a girl who's below 12. My time, again, what's the reason, Rabbanan? Nara chaser ksiya parsha. Even though it says nara, which indicates between 12 and 12 and a half, it says the word nara chaser, meaning the final hay. So since it's meaning the final hay, it's coming to note that even a woman, actually even a girl who's a kedana, also gets a knas, even she's not fully a nara yet. She doesn't have the hay at the end. Says the Gemara, again here the Mepharshim change. My kaim Rabbi Meir nara. How does Rabbi Meir learn the nara without the hay? What is it going to teach? It's going to him. Ravo Rabbi Shimon Lakish. Ravo's the name Rabbi Shimon Lakish will tell you. Nara achash leim ksil parsha. Once it says nara with the hay, and that's why Motzi Shemra, by a person who says bad things about his wife, right? Limda. Call a parsha, so that already teaches us the entire parsha, even when it says Nara missing a hay, she b'gdola, that's talking about an adult girl. So therefore the premise you said before is incorrect. Obviously if it's talking even about an adult girl, so then, since that's the case, it's telling us that it's telling us that there's only knas by girls already 12, right? Mesa Rabbanan, Rabbanan asks Rabbanan.
The fact that it's not chasser once tells us that only, according to Rameir, that only Gedola gets knas?
Right. Yeah. Okay? Only Gedola gets knas. According to Rabbanan argue. Mesa Rabbanan. So Rameir asks Rabbanan the following question. Harei moti shemra. What about person moti shemra? Person who says bad things about his wife. Harei ksib bo nara. There it also says nara v'higadoila. And there must be told, however, about a woman who's running an adult. They ain't katana niskelis. Because it says that if it comes out that she's true, and she wasn't a psula, she gets stoned, right? Well, if she's a katana under 12, what are you going to stone her? You can't stone her. She's not basonchin. She's not susceptible to punishment yet. So if that's the case, how can you say whenever it says nara without an hay, it means a girl who's under 12. There it's clearly talking about a girl over 12 because she's stoned, and yet it says nara without an hay. So Rabbanan, what do Rabbanan do with that? The Rabbanan Amrei, the Rabbanan say, what do Rabbanan say about this? Rabbanan said the Potter explained Shepo Aleh Derech Zachrus. That's say about a case where he had relations with her the improper way. Derech Zachrus means to the other side. So since he had relations with her Derech Zachrus, so there in that case we say that wait a second. Um,
Even then, maybe she would get knas.
no, problem is this Motzi Shemra. Yeah, I think what he's trying to say is like this.
Also kind of a skila.
Right.
Carbonated says kind of a skila.
So, what?
Carbonated says, afilu hachi.
No, I think, but that doesn't make sense. I think it's the opposite. I think it means that it's coming to preclude. It's when it says here, when it says they're not raw, it means it has to be that you had relations with her in the normal fashion, because otherwise you cannot tell that she's a psula or not. Or you can't say have relations. Yeah, no way. Instead, knows that she's a psula or not a psula. So therefore, I think there's actually a mute of Gemara's Even though it sounds like a reboot to include something, I think it's actually a mute. And the Gemara is saying, which means the only way that you can know whether it's actually true or not is if he had full relations with her, right? So Der Zachrus is not good. Der Zachrus is precluded because it says Nara once with the hay. It means you have to have full relations with her as if she's a complete Nara. Right, not to go through some other orifice. So therefore, that's a narrative that's got to be not derech zachrus. So the part of derech zachrus is you can't be a moti shemra because he's not believed. Derech zachrus means like you would do in a homosexual relationship.
No, the whole thing with skila and not skila. With
Yeah, you only get skila when it's the first time on the betrothed girl.
Oh, the betrothed girl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not the second time, and not in a married girl.
I missed the betrothed thing.
Oh, you got it yesterday.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Memory is failing 24 hours at this point.
yeah, I'm flying.
Okay. They say it gets worse. Okay. You should know. It's the second time around.
I don't remember the first.
You don't remember the first time around?
Killers were the first time. Oh, trip the first time around.
Okay.
Shouldn't say that.
Says the Gemara. Right, Yaakov bar Bo Kumirav. That's our Rav. Habo Ktana Mao. You have relations with a Ktana. Now this Ktana, she's been married. She was married off by her father. But it says in Pasuk, in order to get skila, what do you have to be, Mr. Zuger?
Betrothed.
Betrothed. Nara means over 12, right? Besula, right? First time around. Virgin, right? So what happens if a girl is a Ktana, Besula Murasa? A betrothed, virgin, but under 12. No, it's Mara asked. Mara says, Mara's question, I'm not asking, it was a rhetorical question. You didn't have to answer it. Armalei, so he said Beskila. You get stoned? Hapola Bogeris Mount. What if she's over 12 and a half, right? She's already over the hill. Armalei, so he said, no. Aniakra, I'll read you now for low Bogeris. Only an hour, not a Bogeris. It says, what are you talking about? Ukra Nara V'lo So say thing, Nara, not a young girl. Armalei, so he said back to him, look it. Don't you concede to me that by Ktana there's Knas? Now this is not like Reb Meir, because Meir is only, Knas also begins only at 12. Where it says, don't you concede to me that like Rabbana, the Knas begins when she's a youngster as well? So if that, why is that? Because it says here in the pasuk Tachas Sherina, but the Korban says it's the wrong pasuk. Should be Alvara Sherina. All right, so I've seen one that's written one place, one's in the other place. But anyway, it's Alvara Sherina. The Rabbos is a Ktana that teaches us that a Ktana. Now here it says the word Knas, but the Korban takes out the word Knas. But the point is the same. The point is that a Ktana has all the status of a Nara, right? Ukra, so too I should say, Ukra Shekra Advar Sherina, L'Rabos is a Bogeris. They should all be the same. What's the difference, right? So if there's a pasuk Advar Sherina, which works to include a Kedana, so Advar Sherina should also include a Bogeris. Amar Rav, so Rav said, you know what, it's a good taina. However, Afa got the Natzche Yaakov, even though Reb Yaakov was victorious bedin on logic, halacha is despite that it's exempt, that habor ktana b'skila, somebody who has relations with the ktana gets skila. even though someone has relations with the Bogeres, a girl over 12.5 only gets chenek. The P'tur and the girl is exempt, of course. Rabbi Yavam, because she's a minor. Rabbi Yavam Shem Shmuel said, "V'lama, it should be lama lo shama laminado." Why did you?
Isn't that what Rabbi Yaakov Bar Boaz said?
No, Yaakov Bar Taina, that is based on the psukim, it should be congruent.
He said that Katana is
Katana and Bulgaria should be the same. Whatever they are, they should be the same. So he's reputing it. He's saying, even though it's a good logic, because what difference should be between Katana and Bulgaria? The mice we don't pass them away. They pass them, they're not the same. The Katana, if he has relations with the Katana Besula Murasa, then it's Skila. If he has relations with a Bulgaris Nara Besula, a Bulgaris Besula Murasa, then it's only Chenek. Okay? So even though Rabbi Yaakov seemed to have won the Pasuk argument, we don't pass like it. That's what I was trying to say. Okay? Halacha. Halacha is Abba Aktar B'skila, Fi P'tur, and she's them. Rabbi Yaakov Mishem Shmuel said, are you really cold?
I'm coming down with a cold. I'm just not feeling well.
Because I'm hot. Rabbi, somebody came in the afternoon once and was giving, I don't know if I told you, but somebody came in the afternoon and I was saying shiur without my jacket on, the afternoon shiur. Somebody came in, one of the locals, and he said, I'm embarrassed for you that I could be saying shiur without wearing my jacket. So since then, I never take off my jacket in the afternoons. But there's an exception here.
I remember the Brennan at Kfar Hasidim, you said shiur.
In Eretz Yisrael, yes, but not in America. America, it's very, very, very taboo to say shiur with a jacket. The first time when I came from Shalvim to Eretz Yisrael, so my cousin, who was a younger man, he took me to introduce me to Rabbi Ruderman, which is a disaster. Well, it's a someday, other day, I'll tell you about it. It's an utter disaster. But in any event, but afterwards he was severely reproached by some of his fellow younger light. They didn't come to me because I was just a greener off the street, that he took me over even though I wasn't wearing a jacket. Because you can't speak for the Rosh Hashiva if you're not wearing a jacket. So, anyway, but...
You probably didn't even see them.
No, I'm sure the Russian Rabbi Ruderman did not see whether I had a jacket or not. He was basically blind at that point. But in any event. Okay, although later on, actually, they did some surgery in his cataracts. I think his vision slightly improved. But, yeah. Says what? Rabbi Shem Shmuel said, "V'lama, it should be v'lama lo shamal midla minada." Why didn't he hear? Why didn't he learn that from here? It says Umeiso Isha Shochavi Molavado. It says the man who had relations with her, he dies by himself. We're talking about a case of rape, but obviously the girl doesn't have a sin, right? What did she do wrong? Matam Lom Naro, the son of our wives ever say you don't do anything to the girl. Because the girl had nothing, had no sin. So it's interesting, here we really have the source for statutory rape, right? So it's going to tell us rather that the girl, if you have relations with a girl who is on a Ketana Murasa, that you still get your skila, even though he patura, even though she's exempt because she's underage. Okay? You got the statutory rape penalty of skila. Homer.
What happens in this case? I'm just curious. This is very tangential.
Yeah.
What's the deal with Adam Zolman?
Well, Ames is a special post to tell us that he gets Mises Aboel. Yeah, okay.
She could be willing and still spend her
But
That's correct. That's not
yeah. That's by the Nara. That's not by the Katana.
No, by the Katana. By Katana. He's saying, Eno Ilin Nara, Taneo Ilin Katana. It's about Nara Ba'ones, but that's obvious, right? She's honest. She was compelled, right? Yeah. So he made Ilin Nara Ba'ones, Taneo Ilin Katana, and even Bepito because of statutory rape. Okay, Omer Pitisi Bito shows Bito Shaploni. I seduced so and so's daughter. Mishalai Bosh's Bagama Biatzmo. He pays the embarrassment and the damage in value based on his own confession. However, they know Mishalim Lo Tashlumei Kefaf Lo Tashlumei Arba V'Chamisha. He doesn't pay I skipped. Sorry. Ve'en Mishalim Knas. He doesn't pay the Knas, the fine, based on his own admission, because it's a principle which you have throughout Shas, and really it's all here, that anybody who concedes a fine does not pay it. Okay? If you concede a fine, you don't pay the fine. Concede it. Yeah, if you concede it before you come to court. If they have to schlep you to court before you confess it, you pay the fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if they confess it beforehand, then you don't have to pay it. Similarly, Omer Ganafti, somebody says I stole, Mishayim Security pays the principal, Al Piatzel based on his own mission. Veda Mishayim Lo Tashlumi Kefa, but he doesn't pay the double if he stole in secret. Lo Tashlumi Ara Chamishin, or the quadruple and quintuple if he stole in public. The opposite. No. Tashlumi Kefa is stolen in secret, and Tashlumi Ara Chamishin if he sold it or slaughtered it, right? Hamishor is Ploni. What if he says, my ox scored somebody to death? Or Shosha Ploni, or my ox scored another ox to death. Arayim Shalom Piatzim, he pays based on his own confession. Hamishori Abdusha Ploni, if he says, my ox killed so-and-so's Evet, so-and-so's slave, Ein Shalom Piatzim, doesn't pay based on his confession, because that's like a fine, as the Gemara will say. That causes general principle, Kol Mishalim Yosef. Yosef Mashiach, anybody pays more than the damage, and Rishon Piatzmo, he doesn't pay based on his own confession. Right now, the following Gemara, this entire Gemara till the end of the parak, is not in the Bavli at all.
Can I just get something straight?
You could try.
Chatzi Nezek.
Why? That's the Bavli.
I know.
The Bavli has a lot of such a Chatzi Nezek Knasu.
Okay. So those, if the person will be motive in the
The
case.
Chatzi Nezek you'd be Potter. Right. Because it's all machlekes in the Bavli. I forget between whom and whom. What's a Chatzi Nezek? When you pay for an ox, the first time it gored half damages.
Right.
Whether that's knas or not. I think we passed it is a knas. Because kol moment she'enu mishtal moshe, whenever you don't get precise damages, that's considered to be a knas. Okay? But that's not the topic of the Bavli. That's
Really, even like Chatzi Nezek throwers then.
of course, yeah. Based on this principle, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if they discussed it because Chatzin throws a loch l'mosh misinas. I don't remember what they say, but that is a discussion in the Bavli. Rabbi Yitzchak asked, "Mao shishan demei even piatzmo." This is actually a very cool question, and as I said, the Bavli does not discuss it all. When you kill an Evid, what do you have to pay? You kill somebody else's Evid, what do you have to pay? Your own Evid, he goes free. You kill somebody else's Evid, what do you have to pay? 30 shekel, 30 zuz, whatever it is. So 30 kesef. So Mashishan may have piazza. If you admit you killed somebody else's slave, do you pay or do you get off the hook? Says what are you asking? Kol shloshim knas. It's obvious because it says 30. You always pay 30, so that's a knas. So you should always be exempt if you concede. It says Mark Gavaldige Chilik. A great chilik. It says Matzri Cholei. What's his question? Kol shloshim knas. Well, our question is all the entire amount of the 30 knas, or yoser midov of knas, or only that which is above and beyond his value. In other words, let's say he's worth 13 zuz. So is all 30 the knas, or only the additional 17 you have to pay over his value? So nafkamina is if you're motive a knas. If you hold that the whole 30 is a knas, so then you're exempt from the whole 30. If you hold only the part above and beyond his value is a knas, so then you're exempt only from 17, but the 13 you got to pay. Okay? It's a very cute issue. That's the question. It's not weird. Would you say it's weird?
Say it again. If
you have to pay 30.
Right.
His value was 17.
Right. So 13 over is the knas.
Is 13 over the knas, or is it, since the 30 is knas, really the entire 30 is regarded as knas?
Oh, I see.
And the ramifications if you concede in the court, right?
Yeah.
You can come in. Okay? So it says the Gemara, Matzich le'kol shloshim knas v'yesim midava knas. Item at Tapachov Gimlav. Item at Kol Shloshim Knas. You don't say all 30 is a knas in Rishal. Okay, it doesn't pay, right? Item at Yesim Midava Knas. We say only that which is above and beyond his value is a knas. V'shaim, he pays his value, he just doesn't pay the rest of it. So it says, I'm going to try and bring you proof. Tamatim learned over there. Hamish Shorchas Avdi. A guy says, your ox killed my slave. The woman Mary says, no, he says, no. Mashbiachani, take an oath. He said he took an oath. Now, it turns out he lied. In fact, it was his ox. So, Potter, he doesn't have to bring a korban shvua. So what do we see here from the fact that he doesn't have to bring a korban shvua? Why should he not have to bring a korban shvua if he lied? It must be because you only bring a korban shvua if you lied on a pre-existing obligation. But a knas must not be a pre-existing obligation, right? At least that's why it would seem that you're exempt from korban shvua. In other words, what incentive for taking korban shvua? If it would be money, nothing. If you're exempt from taking korban shvua, it must be because it's considered to be something else. What is it considered? It must be considered to be knas, right? And knas is something else. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi said, that may be true. So the Chori want to say from here that if it says potur, so it means you're potur altogether, and that means it must be that it's all considered to be a knas, right? Amrei Chagai kum Rabbi Yossi. Chagai said for Rabbi Yossi, no. The part you can explain it. Shehem is eved mukashchin. You can say it's about a case where the slave that was killed was a leper, and therefore his value was zilch. That's where it's all a knas, and that's why if you take a false oath, you don't have to bring a korban shvua on it. But where the evidence is actually worth money, maybe the part of money which he's worth is not a knas, but rather a payment, and they're not a fine but a payment, and maybe there the parameters are different. Says the Gemara, Omar Lo, so he said to him, Emor the Basra, look at the following case there, it's a case in the Brisa. Heim is shorchas b'ni. If a guy says, your ox killed my son, and the owner of the ox says it's not true, Mashbiachani, the owner of the father says, I make you take an oath. V'amar amein, and he says, amein. To what the defendant says, amein. It wasn't my ox, right? Chayev. So in that case, if he was lying, it has to bring a korban shvua. So says the Gemara, why is there being a korban shvua if he's lying? Potter mukashchin, yeah, potter. Say it's talking about the mukashchin, and he should be living potter altogether. Because of knas, right? Chayev means you're chayev a korban shvua. But if you examine, if we're talking about that he has no value, so it should be exempt from korban shvua, because nothing to take a shvua on. Says Moram Rabbi Chagai kum Rabbi Yossi, Tipoter command Domar. It's going to opinion that says v'nosam pidyon nafsho shom mazik. It's going according to opinion which holds that when you pay pidyon nefesh of the damager. Now this is a case where you have an ox which gored somebody to death. You have to pay kofar. You have to pay a ransom. Whose ransom do you have to pay? Your ransom because you did an evil deed and let your ox go on a rampage, or is the guy who was killed? His value is ransom because you're atoning for his death, right? So he says, Amar Levi, again, Amar Chagai kum Rabbi Yossi, Tipotek man marvanosa pidyon nafshu shamazik. We're talking about the opinion who holds that when you give kofar, you give him ransom, you go according to the mazik, to the person who damaged, not the damagee, right? The person who killed, or whose ox killed, to be more accurate, not the person who was killed. So it says the Gemara, Amar Levi, Inkamand Marvanosan Pidyon Nafshu Shamazik Kulo Knas. He said that's not going to help you at all. You want to say it's Pidyon Nefesh. What you want to say is that if it's the value of the nizak, then it's a knas, right? And it should be. One second. No, because that would be knas which is kapora. So kufr kapora, but the question is whether it's kapora of penalty or a punishment.
It's kapara because otherwise you get re-segregated from that.
Right, you're right. I'm glad you're learning Marcus properly. But the thing is that the question here is whether it's considered to be a knas or considered to be a moment. So he says here He wanted to say that sorry about the pidyon nefesh of the mazik. The mazik pays his value. As the mazik pays his value, I want to say it's not a knas. And that's your chayav korban shvua. So the Gemara says, no. If it's the mazik's value, on the contrary, definitely going to be chayav korban shvua. Because what's more knas? Is it more knas if you're paying for the guy who was gored to death? Or is it more knas if you're paying for the guy who's oxid the goring? If you're paying for the guy who was gored to death, there's some logic to it that's less of a knas. But if you're paying to make mazik, it definitely is a knas. Right? So therefore, if you're going to say it's the main mazik, which you're paying here, so it's more of a knas, more reason to be potter for korban shvua. So that's the thing, right? He's saying that the whole thing is a knas, so therefore it should definitely be potter from a korban shvua. Right. Yet it says you're chayav, right? It says in the Sefer, let's look at it, it says in the Sefer, Hemi Shorcha, it's b'ni v'omer loimis, mashbiachani v'omar omein chayav. Right? It says the chayav of korban shvua. Why is it chayav of korban shvua? Because it's made pidyon nafshu shamazik, it's a knas, and a knas there is no korban shvua. All right, the Gemara doesn't answer that. It says more, ma'u sh'yomulo, tzeyedei shamayim. Now this is also not in the Bavli. If a guy gets off the hook because it's a guy gets off the hook from paying because it's a he's moed b'knas. You can see it's the knas, right? So do we tell him? But still, even though Beit can't be mechayev you should do it in order to fulfill the heavenly decree. Meaning that we can't be mechayev you, but in heaven they would have wanted you to be chayev, because obviously you committed a heinous act. So for his own kapara, does he have to give the knas which he doesn't have to give based on the legal system? So it says, "Manish minor adults are out from here." Ma'asera Gamliel's Ma'asera Gamliel Shipil Shein Tavi Avdo. He knocked out the tooth of Tavi's slave. Now, he was very happy because Tavi was his favorite slave and wanted to release him. Asal Gabi Rabbi Shua. What? No. Asal Gabi Rabbi Shua came from Rabbi Yeshua. The Amalei, so he said to Rabbi Shua, Tavi Avdi, Tavi my servant, Matzasi Ula Shachar, I found a ruse to get him out of slavery. Not just a ruse, a reason actually, because he actually should be exempt from slavery because I knocked out his tooth. Amalei Yeshua said, Umabi Yodcha, what do you have in your hand to sustain this? Vein Knas Tzelav Beis Veidim. We can only be mechayev with the knas and to release Tavi if you have aid him, then you beat him and you come to court and base him for decreases and you have no proper witnesses to this respect. So you have to leave Tavi a slave. So says the obvious from here, let them say to him, well, it's true we can't force him to free Tavi, but you should free Tavi in order to be a tzaddik, right? So what does this teach us? Adam Rosh Einomin Lo Tzedei must not tell the fellow who's moed b'knas that he has to be yotzei yedei shamayim. So Yeran Gamliel, since he was moed b'knas, he has to keep Tavi a slave because we don't take him to go be yotzei yedei shamayim. It's a fascinating thing. He blew it. He shouldn't have been moed b'knas. He shouldn't have come to court. He should have waited with their Eidim. I guess there were no Eidim to come. Probably there were no Eidim were going to come. So therefore, no matter when he came, he would have been moed b'knas. I guess that's the pshat.
Well, this also impacts upon the question of chiur. It's an ongoing obligation, so that's apply in all cases.
Right. That's it seems that it wouldn't apply here, but then again, one could say that here it's different. Normally, it would apply in all cases. We wouldn't have to have this question, but here we have a unique problem which you have to deal with, which is you can't provide aiding and abetting to goyim. I mean, not to goyim, to avoid. Because it says olam b'hem ta'avodu.
Yeah.
Aiding and abetting is a wrong term. You can't put them on the Underground Railroad. Because Lolam Ben Tavodu, you have to keep them working. So therefore here, even if you might say that Vasisa Yashavato would normally dictate your behavior, but here unless you're at least Mechuyev Lotzisidei Shamayim, you have the imperative of Lolam Ben Tavodu. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So that would overcome Vasisa Yashavato. And really, this is really the Chazam Sofer at the bottom says it.
Does he really?
Basically. He doesn't answer your question your way, but he says that he does explain the sugya more or less what I'm explaining to you now. So name it. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Gamliel, not to be confused with Rabbi Gamliel. Not more named Rabbi Gamliel, but Rabbi Avina. Baikum Rabbi Asfer Raimana. Rabbi Gamliel the Tana. Kimad the Marmutal Shachro. Does he hold it's permitted to release a slave? Then we know it's also. And Moshe said no. Kol Garmo, his entire premise. Amra tells us Sha'asa Shachro, not let to free a slave. You okay, and if not, loyal shachar, you okay, loyal shachar, but you should release Tavi the moment he liked him. So it must be on the contrary that it's awesome to release his slave, and he was looking for an excuse to release him. Okay, it says in the Mishnah further. Narashi Spatata is really an artificial distinction between the third and fourth pair. Narashi Spatata, there's no tsar, but in case there is tsar, where it's by an honest, by a rape, but fusa. You hold it in abeyance until no, Tfusa is I made a big mistake. The time of this a girl who's grabbed. Tfusa means a girl who's grabbed. So it's a girl who underwent onus. But Tsar Tfusa, if there's a case of a girl who was grabbed and she underwent anguish, then that goes to the father as well. Now, Amda Bedin, if she went to court, Achlo Mesa before her father died, Harain Shalav, then the money belongs to the father. Mesa, when the father dies, Harain Shalav goes to her brothers because they inherited. Lois Biglav Mesa, she didn't come to court, Achlo Mesa before her father died, Harain Shalav, so she gets to keep the money herself. Okay? Matana Nara, who's the author of our mission which says specifically a Nara between 12 and 12 and a half? Man, as I said previously, Barak Rabbanim, Makor Rabbanim, Afilu Kitana. Even by Kitana, the halacha is that all this stuff goes to her father. She gets all the stuff and goes to her father. Vatsar B'tfusa, and the tsar in a girl who's grabbed, that's Banusa. That's by a girl's rape. The local Rabbi Shimon, it's not Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon pointed this on this min tsar. We learned yesterday Rabbi Shimon exempts an onus from tsar because just doing what would have happened later on. So this mission is obviously not telling you that because the mission holds the tsar in the process. Akadun for my boy machas biyah in the sense stuff which has to do which is related to the relations. Ava chavaba. What, however, if that goes to the father? What if he beat her? Simeis eno. But not the father, but somebody else beat her. Simeis eno blinded the girl. Cut her for her arm. Shibas Rava, cut her for her foot. Lemi Mashali. In that case, who gets paid? Her or her father? Lo Lavia. For bodily harm to her. Rabbi Yochanan Nosson Aviyah give it to her father. Rabbi Shimon Lakish Omer, no Saint Latzma. She keeps it herself. Now, what's this based on this machlokas? Mizbar Sava Rabbi Shimon Lakish, is it the Rabbi Shimon Lakish holds that her handiwork is hers until she grows to be 12 and a half, and therefore she gets to keep the damage to herself. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan, actually, they're hers from the time she's 12 to the time she's 12 and a half. And therefore she gets to keep herself. Rabbi Yochanan holds me bogra ve'elach, that, no, it's only from the time she becomes 12 and a half that she gets to keep this stuff, but not when she's under 12 and a half. And based on this, what we would say is that the machlokas between who is the antagonist here? I made a mistake in translating the last line. Until she becomes a Bulgaris as well. Rabbi Yochanan Amar mi bogra. No, not as well. Again, I made the same mistake. The money is hers until Bagrus, right? Rabbi Yochanan until she becomes 12 and a half. Rabbi Yochanan mi bagura ve'elech. Even after she becomes a Bulgaris, the money goes to her father. That's where I made a mistake. Okay. This machlokes is not brought down to Bavli. The Bavli holds Maaseh there. Anything she makes goes to her father. And you're going to have to pass a kol shvach nureh l'arviyah. B'nureh beis aviyah. Kol shvach nureh, anything she makes goes to her father. So as long as she's in her father's house, her Maaseh Daim, her handiwork, the profit from her handiwork goes to her father. But Yerushalmi is actually bringing down Machlokas. The Shimon Lakish says that at some point she gets it herself, and Rabbi Yochanan says, no, she doesn't get it herself. Right? She has to give it to her father. So Rabbi Yamashir said, Ad Shas Bogra Pligin. He wanted to say differently. He said, no. The Machlok is only until she's a Bulgaris. Bogra ve'elach, but once she becomes a Bulgaris, 12 and a half, Kol Ha'mamoide, everybody agrees Shein Shalatz when she gets to keep it herself. Okay, so what's the Machlok? It says Rabbi Avin. Rabbi Avin says Machlok says, until the time she becomes a Bulgaris, until the time she becomes 12 and a half, who gets the Maaseh Daim? As I said in the Bavli, it's partial that it all goes to the husband, right? But to not the husband, to the father. Based on Vila. But the Yerushalmi ultimately Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, that Rabbi Yochanan knows that when she's a Nara, the Shevach goes to her father. Reish Lakish, which is like the Bavli. Reish Lakish goes to her herself, right? So says the Gemara, Masis Messiah Day, Masis Messiah. Then I have Brisa, which is proof to each one of them. Masis Messiah Rabbi Yochanan. What's Brisa of Rabbi Yochanan? Which says that even when she's a Bulgaris, he gets to get the money. It says Achol Vivno Vito, somebody who damages the daughter and son shel chaver of his friend. V'shel beno yite miyad. For the son, he gives it immediately. V'shel bito, for the daughter, however, yasabem skula, he makes for it something which is continuously bears fruit, such as a fruit tree. And he gets to eat the fruit until she becomes an adult, at which point she takes over the fruit of the tree. So what do we see here is a brisa like Rabbi Yochanan. How is this Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Yochanan says here that what? His father gets the money, right? Here it says explicitly that if it's somebody else's friend.
Well, the father gets the payros until she reaches of age.
What?
School, he gets the school until she comes of age.
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, so, okay. So, because the way the Carmenite explains, like you, is that the proof is from the fact that he has to get something which will bear fruit, and he gets to keep the fruit till she becomes an adult. So that means that the Maaseh Daim go to him until she becomes an adult. That's right, very good. So, Rabbi Yehuda said, Avoid Rabbi Yehuda, and father Rabbi Yehuda, avoid Rabbi Nisan, his father Rabbi Nisan said, East Masnei Reisha v'Sefer M'Seil Reish Lakish. The son will learn the following brisa with its Reisha and Sefer as a proof to Reisha Melakish. It says, Achayvo bebito ktan, if somebody damages his own minor daughter, this kashala, where does the money go? To her, to the minor herself. The father who did this is exempt from the Boshas of Pagam, of course, because the Boshas of Pagam will go to him anyway. That doesn't change. If other people damage a girl, she gets the damages, and the rest of the Boshas of Pagam, because the Shah here is something else. The Shah is the Sheves. The Sheves means his she can't work. There's a payment because your daughter can't work. and for the amount of time she can't work, you get compensated for that. The reason why that compensation goes to the father, and Lisa Caleb explain here, is because, or at least, you make from it, you buy some real estate and you grow food and the food goes to the father, is because the father has the ultimate right over Shevis. The reason why he has the ultimate right over Shevis is because he has the right to marry her off. And as long as she's sick, as long as she's unemployed, she's not marriageable, right? So therefore, since that's the case, it's actually lost for him. So therefore, they place this thing under his jurisdiction. I'm not sure I explained that properly. The idea of what I was trying to say, that the Shevis, Shar is Shevis, right? The unemployment goes to him. So Yaseb, at least partially, Yaseb Bem Skula, make for him a Skula, and he gets it while she's still in his house. Ubosh become a Shalavia, and the Bosh Gam go to her father, right? Now, that's a right to Rish Lakish, because we see explicitly that the stuff goes to her herself. Back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that everything goes by Hamodah B'Din when she comes to court. Now, this actually is in contradiction, or actually is subject of Malchokos we learned last night, the night before, I forget already. What determines the status of the Knas? So, what told you that it goes after the time she comes to court? Tyler Shimon says, I'll tell you what, because one post says, V'nasal and you give to the girl. The other post says, V'nasal and you give to the father of the girl. Okay, so how do we reconcile those two psukim? If she went to court before her father died, so then her father already got the results of the court case as his chus, right? That's what works that you give to the father of the girl. Mesovia, if her father died before she got to court, and therefore the court could not reward it to him, but only to her. So then that's the case of Ashkechas Amar, and that's where she gets herself. Now, let's say she went to court before she became Bulgarian court, she came 12 and a half. And then she came 12 and a half. Ashkachas Aimer, in this case we find that you say that V'nasal Lavi and you give to the father, right? Misha Bagra, however, she only got to court once she was over 12 and a half. Ashkachas Aimer, in that case you say V'nasal La'atzma, she herself gets it. Why is it that she gets herself for herself? Minon and immediately that if her father predeceased her court date, she gets herself, and it doesn't go to her father's heirs, to her brothers. Rabbi B'Shem Yocham said, I'll tell you why. You should bequeath your slaves over to your children as an inheritance. Your slaves can't be inherited. However, your daughters can't be inherited. And therefore, if the father dies before they get to court, so then the knas goes to her. It's not inherited, not bequeathed to, and inherited by the kids of the father who didn't make it. A b'knas, a kosa v'daver. And this passage is talking about knas. Okay, so therefore what it's going to tell us is that the brothers don't have any jurisdiction in the knas, unlike a regular Yerusha. And that's why if the father dies before the court case, so the knas goes to her. Taner Rebbe Chia said, "Ein lo," and the brothers don't get lo b'knasei abbas, not in the knasos, not in the fines. Lo b'yisrael, not what she gets for her seduction. Lo b'chavaleh, not what she gets for being wounded. Knas. Ein mosai mischayv. Now I just want to do one more line, which harks back, and we'll come back to this on Monday. Ein mosai mischayv. When do we become chayiv in knas? So obviously it seems to be subject to our Mishnah. Mishnah says you become chayiv in knas for the time you go to case, court, but it's actually machlokas amoraim. The question is how to reconcile with that Mishnah. Rabbi Yoina man Mishar Rishoya. Here says you become chayiv in knas from the moment you committed the avera. Rabbi Yosef himself only when he gets machlokas we had. For our Mishnah, we'll come back to it on Monday.